Hi, I'm John, and let me tell you about the time my ex-girlfriend left 350 euros at my place and how I turned it into the most poetic act of revenge I've ever pulled off. It involves her Nazi-sympathetic family, a forgotten wallet, and a donation to an Auschwitz survivor charity she'll never see coming. We were together for almost a year. She was German, elegant, educated, rich, and came from the kind of old-money European family that made you feel like they still ran castles and judged your silverware technique. Her name was Anna. On the surface, everything about her screamed perfection. She was poised, stylish, spoke 4 languages, and could walk into any room and command attention without saying a word. When we first met in Berlin at a gallery opening, it felt like magic. She was mysterious and intellectual, and she liked that I was grounded, maybe even a little plain by comparison. At least, that's what I told myself back then. Over the months, though, the cracks started to show. Not just in our relationship, but in her story. The first red flag came when she invited me to meet her grandmother. A well-kept woman in her late 80s, still wearing pearls and lipstick, sharp as a knife and just as cold. We sat in this beautiful old house sipping tea, and in the middle of a story about her childhood, she casually mentioned that she had been in the Hitler Youth. Just dropped it in like she was talking about taking piano lessons. I blinked. Wait, what? She nodded politely. Of course, she said. Everyone was. It was part of school. Normal at the time. I didn't know what to say. I looked at Anna, who just rolled her eyes a little and gave this tight-lipped smile like, "Oh, Grandma." Later that night, I brought it up again. Anna brushed it off like it was no big deal. "You have to understand," she said. "There was no choice. Everyone went along or they disappeared. It doesn't mean anything." But it did. And it got worse. Turns out her grandfather had been an engineer during WW2. Specifically, he designed U-boats for the German military. Not just any engineer, he was one of the key people building the technology for Nazi Germany's submarine fleet. The family never openly called him a Nazi, but the air around his past was thick with carefully chosen silence. Anna's father inherited not only money, but the engineering blueprints, and after the war, he used that knowledge to build a modern business, still in engineering, just less overtly weaponized. That's where the real money came from. Every luxury Anna enjoyed, every euro spent on boarding school, designer clothes, vacations in Sardinia, it all traced back to that legacy. But Anna stuck to her story. He didn't have a choice, she'd repeat. He was just doing what he had to do to survive. I never believed it. Not really. It wasn't the kind of survival that involved running or hiding. It was profit. They weren't victims of the machine. They helped build it. I didn't say anything for a long time because love makes you swallow some ugly truths. But it stayed with me, like a bad taste. Then our relationship started falling apart. Not because of her grandparents directly, but because Anna had this superiority complex she couldn't switch off. She judged my friends, looked down on my job, and once even told me I'll never understand how real power works. She said it while sipping wine from a bottle that probably cost half my rent. We began arguing about everything. How I spent my time, my career, even what I wore. One night, I overheard her telling a friend on the phone, "Honestly, he's just a phase. I don't see him lasting more than another month or two." Like I was a pet. Like I didn't matter. That night, I mentally checked out. I started watching the relationship from the outside, just waiting for the final straw. And it came. We had a nasty fight. She called me small, said I didn't fit into her world, that I would never be accepted by people like her. Then she left. No goodbyes, just a slam of the door and the sound of her boots hitting the pavement. A few days after, I was cleaning out the apartment when I noticed a wallet tucked up on a shelf in my closet. I opened it. Inside was 350 euros in crisp bills. Then I remembered Anna had mentioned her grandmother gave her the money in cash as a gesture, and she had shoved it into that wallet without much thought. "What am I going to do with this?" she had laughed. "She still thinks I pay for things in cash like it's the 1950s. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me thought, just message her, tell her it's here. But then I remembered everything. The arrogance, the casual dismissal of her family's past, the way she reduced me to a phase. And I thought, maybe this money could do something better, something poetic. So I started doing research. I didn't want to just give the money away. I wanted it to go somewhere who deserved it, someone her family would never, ever choose to help. I found a nonprofit supporting Holocaust survivors, particularly those from Auschwitz. They provided housing, food, medicine, companionship, and community to people still living with trauma unimaginable to most of us. They were humble, underfunded, and doing beautiful work. I sent them an email. I explained, I have 350 euros that belong to the granddaughter of a Nazi U-boat engineer. Her grandmother was in the Hitler Youth. They never atoned, but I want this money to go somewhere it might matter. I told them it was anonymous, and yes, a little unconventional, but it came from a place of sincerity. I hit send. A few days later, they replied. It was a simple note, nothing flashy, but it hit me hard. They said, "Thank you for this act of remembrance. Every gesture matters. Every truth has value." I wired them the money, and that was that. I didn't feel like a hero, but I did feel clean, like I'd taken something dirty and made it meaningful. Anna never asked about the money, not even once. Maybe she forgot. Maybe she assumed it wasn't worth following up. But part of me hopes that one day I run into her again. Somewhere random, a party, a street corner, a wedding, and she says, "Hey, did I ever leave a wallet at your place?" And I'll smile. "Yeah, you did. I donated it to an Auschwitz survivor charity on your behalf." And I'll watch her face change. I won't say it to be cruel, just honest. A simple act of balance. The thing is, 350 euros won't fix history. It won't erase her grandfather's blueprints or her grandmother's uniforms. It won't change the fact that her father built a fortune on shadows. But that money, her money, helped someone live a little easier. Someone who lived through hell. Someone who remembers. And that means more than any apology her family never gave. So if you ever find yourself in a relationship that makes you question your own morality, your worth, or your voice, remember this: revenge doesn't always have to be loud. It doesn't have to be cruel or dramatic. Sometimes the most satisfying revenge is quiet, precise, and so poetic it sings. And sometimes it's just 350 euros, a bank transfer, and a smile you keep to yourself for the rest of your life.